Do I need to up or down any gain over here?
I think you sound great.
Great. Thanks, Shane.
So Veronica, I can call you Veronica, right? It's
Yeah.
Veronica. Okay, Veronica. We have a problem. Over in Japan, they be cloning dinosaurs as if they've never seen an episode of Jurassic Park. And that's a big problem because over here in North America, we got QAnoners. And if the dinosaurs ever make it over to North America and they're going to start breeding with the QAnoners. And then that next generation of QAnoners, they're going to have a dilemma, because how do you drain the swamp when all your ancestors are actually from the swamp? And you know, we need all those QAnoners because in 2024 we're going to have the return of, you know, Donald P. Trump, which is actually the reincarnation of Jesus H. Christ. That's why they both got that little middle initial thing going on there. Absolutely. And yeah, he needs all his QAnoners ready to go for that election. So we have a problem. I need you to solve it, Veronica. But anyways, hi Steph, how's it going?
Hey Shane, I really liked your southern accent there you just put on.
I don't even know that it's a southern accent. I don't know what to call it.
I thought
people have named that character, they're all inappropriate. All the names are inappropriate.
Well, yeah, I hope so. Are you looking for a career in voice acting, Shane?
Not really. I mean, I've kind of always played with my voice like that. Like I can't have regular conversations without quoting a movie or singing something. I sing, so you know, I'll do instead of speaking, I'll just sing everything that I need to say as if I'm in a musical.
You're my favorite person.
It annoys people, but especially in public.
Yes. I found it to be a very special and helpful trick when dealing with children, when they're screaming and like, put on your shoes and your coat, stop screaming. And then they feel better. And then they look at me like I'm nuts and then they do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you gotta make it fun for them, right?
Absolutely.
So it's been an interesting day. You got to go out and watch some trucks, watch some of those big trucks go by on the highway. How was that?
Yes, sir. It was incredible. I went to the Centennial Bridge here in Hamilton, Ontario. So we watched the trucks pass by on the QEW, and I went with a dear friend, a mutual friend of ours, and then met some friends that were already there. And honestly, for me, it was just a morning filled with joy. There were a lot of tears, and just to see the gloriousness of unity of these people coming together. There was no hate, there was no negativity. Even the people driving by, just the love that we felt, the smiles from the truckers as we sent them off. We were standing there with our drum, Earth Warriors, banging, and what was so beautiful was people actually found the drum. So they heard it and they heard the call. And it was also very interesting when we arrived. It was almost as if, as we walked through with the drum, people kind of parted ways and allowed us through as we walked, you know, on this procession. So it was a very special day. I was very proud to be where I was today.
Very good. It's, you know, it's very nice to see people standing up. Finally, you know, it's been a long 2 years, and some of us have been screaming from rooftops during this whole time that, you know, we would end up at this day eventually if it wasn't like, you know, it's just a shame we couldn't get here sooner, and it couldn't be. I just hope it remains civil. Like I know everyone on this side of it, like everyone's intentions are good. I wanted to ask people in Ottawa to kind of like keep an eye on the landing spot for all of this, because as we've seen with other protests, like there seems to be this mysterious habit of, like, say, skids full of bricks appearing, and you know, things of that nature that always go rather unexplained, but are always very odd and noticeable. And I'm just really hoping that nothing stupid like that gets in the way of what this is not about, right? Like there's no hostility behind this. This is just a simple, like, we've gone far enough with this, and this is our line, and Canada doesn't want to cross this line, at least not a lot of us. So.
No. And I think what you said is key, that there are a lot of us. And, the media is trying to skew it and say that there are just a few of us rioters that are standing there on the streets and yelling. And in reality, I completely agree. What I saw was complete respect, civility between human beings, even the police presence that was there. I even felt love from them for the first time. So that gives me hope. I do agree with you that, dare I say, the forces of evil will always try to make themselves known, we'll just say. And of course, when the light shines bright, those things come forward to make themselves known. So I think we just need to keep shining our light brighter and brighter and brighter.
Well, exactly. We can't, we have to try, it's not, knowing that they like to get in our way doesn't excuse not trying, right? Like, we have to take responsibility for ourselves as sovereign individuals and let, the people who run our country know, like, we've gone far enough with this, and that's it. Absolutely. No hard feelings to either side. Let's just let's call this a spade finally, and move on, instead of making things worse, which seems to be what they want to do on that side, right?
Yes.
Before it gets any further, I think it's very important that this does happen, because lots of people have pointed it out. Once we give the power away, we never get it back. Like, that has never ever happened in history, right? Like, even if you think of personal relationships, when has power ever been given away when you get it and then you get it back? It just doesn't happen, right?
That's very true.
I think that we should keep that in mind here and not back down.
Amen, man.
So aside from all of that, which we'll probably end up coming back to because it's almost impossible not to.
It's in our
I like to hear people's superhuman origin stories. And and especially when there's like creative endeavors and talent and free spirit involved. So if you wouldn't mind, take as long as you want, take as little time as you want, but you were born and then.
Okay. Well, so I was born in Toronto, Ontario. So technically I am a Torontonian, but I grew up in Hamilton, Ontario. And I love this city. I have lived away from this city. I have lived in Europe for a short period of time. I've lived in Toronto. And I have to say, I love living where I live. Stephanie Yelovich, that is me. When I was quite young, many people around me and family members and friends often heard me singing. So from the time I was young, song was something that was always moving through me. Vibration, music was always moving through me. And it was at a pretty young age that I had decided that I wanted to be a performer of some sort. For a bit in there, I decided I would be a Shakespearean actor. That plan fell through because I had a singing voice, and I studied singing. I started in a choir, which I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the group work that we did together. I enjoyed the unity of being in a choir, but my little soul always wanted to let my voice be heard on its own. And so, I studied singing at a young age. I started studying classically at the age of 15. And that voice teacher of mine discovered that my voice didn't necessarily want to do the musical theater thing, the pop thing, the rock thing. My voice wanted to sing classical music and sing opera. So, like I said, I kind of started in musical theater, and I trained there, and I found the love for live performance, for live theater. And then I started my journey with the classical world and with classical music. And I think for me at a young age, I've always loved the classics. I also was a dancer at a young age. So I was a ballet dancer. That was my favorite type of dance until tap came in. And then because I loved rhythm, I loved sound. And then it made its way into the idea that I wanted to do this as a professional, as my career. So I went to Wilfrid Laurier University for voice, and I studied voice, and I also did my opera diploma there. So when I left school, I have a degree in voice performance and an opera diploma. But of course, they warn you about it. You leave school and then all of a sudden it's the real world. And especially in the entertainment industry and especially in the opera world, it's not easy to acquire a job right away. And we have this funny thing here in Canada where we do this like age cutoff in the opera world where, at 30, the competitions end for you as a young artist. And so from 30 on, you have to continue studying. You have to continue working with the teacher. You need a team. You essentially need a group of people who support you as an artist. You can't do it alone. And it was when I discovered my actual team that I started to really find movement in my career. And unfortunately, I didn't find that I learned the most solid singing technique in university. And that was discovered after the fact. During all of that time in being a singer and learning about myself as an artist, I started to have some vocal issues. So I actually, I had vocal injuries that happened. When I was younger, I developed nodes because I had no idea about vocal hygiene. And then later on in university, I ended up experiencing a masterclass where I sang something, some little pop happened in my throat, and then all of a sudden I couldn't maintain a tone. So went to this wonderful doctor in Toronto by the name of Dr. Hands. And that kind of started my journey understanding the holistic side of being an artist and a performer. And then I found Reiki and I found energy work. It was always in my psyche. It was always around me. And what's very funny in how my music world and my singing world connect to the Reiki world or the spiritual world. My Reiki master that I ended up working with was in the car when I went for my audition for university. She was best friends with my voice teacher. So this woman I had never met, sat in the car and she said to me, "Wow, someone's sucking up all the energy in here." And I kind of laughed and went, "What do you mean?" And so she explained, and I never forgot her. I never forgot that moment. And after I finished my 5 years at school, I decided, and through my journey of having these vocal injuries and having to heal myself and to understand my body and my how my energy connected to how I made sound, I did my training. I started and did my level 1. And then I continued on and did my level 2 and decided that this was an extremely important part of who I was, that I was a healer. And I didn't understand that me as an opera singer and as a mezzo soprano and as a healer, as a singer, was also being a healer and working with vibration. And it wasn't until I combined those two things that I really started to find my authentic self and this movement in my life. And so I started to realize that I actually channel sound. I channel melody. Melodies come through me, sounds, light language, weird sounds that I always explain to my clients, just be open-minded. It's all for your highest and best good. And then I met my business partner, whose name is Christian Potenza. He is a very well-known voice actor and film and TV actor in Canada. And it's very funny because it was one of those very fateful meetings where we discussed our teaching styles. He was looking for a teacher. His original business had kind of folded and he was looking for someone to work with. And what was funny is the first time we met, we actually walked up to each other, held each other and cried. And he pulled me back and said, "It's really nice to see you again. We've never met in this life, remember?" So little did I know that I was about to start and create this creative media art center here in Hamilton, Ontario, that is called the Infinity Forge. I became a microphone junkie. I started to talk about things like a digital audio workstation, things that I had never heard of before, and learned about this beautiful connection with the digital world and the technology and how I could apply that to sound, vibration, healing, energy work, singing, and voice. And now I run this studio, and what I consider this place is a temple of art. This for me is a place where people can come to, yes, learn how to do voice acting, yes, learn how to act, yes, learn how to sing, but they can also come to heal. They can also heal through play, through being a voice actor, through being a singer. And now I'm at this point in my life where I didn't expect to be here. And I'm very grateful, because the person that I was 2 to 3 years ago is not the person that I am now. And I like this Stephanie. This Stephanie is a pretty great Stephanie. I'm sure there are other things that I haven't covered. Those are a lot of things that I do, but they make up who I am. And so that's, I suppose, the brief but long version of who is Stephanie Yelovich.
Well, that is all pretty awesome. When you were younger, because you do some voice acting now, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you start when, as a young person, kind of mimicking a lot of different voices and things like that?
Yes. And when you said I'm someone that quotes movies all the time, that's me. I'm the person that a phrase will just trigger a scene in a movie, and then, like, bear with me because I'll go through the entire scene. I'll play all the characters too. So yes, I was always playing around with voice and sound, and I loved mimicking accents. I always loved, my mom is actually fluent in French, Spanish, Serbian. My family's Serbian, Croatian, and of course English. And so I've always really enjoyed languages, and playing around with pulling from those languages and cultures to create characters. And naturally, yes, I've trained in voice in a classical way, but I was able to kind of apply some of that and bring that into the voice world. It was a lot of unlearning, without a doubt. You should have seen me the first time I put headphones on. It was like a kid, like being like, no, take them off. It was very odd hearing my voice piped into my ears.
I know.
But I'm so grateful, because I feel like I've become a more versatile artist. And I can help all those opera singers, in reality, who aren't singing that much right now. Because, if you've made a certain choice to have bodily autonomy and not to be vaccinated, unfortunately, there are a lot of companies that are just not hiring us. And so as a voice actor, we also can work from home. That's the beautiful thing. You can patch me into the studio. So it's been such an accessible and fun career to be a part of.
Yes. So I have some terminology just to avoid any type of censorship. That
Sure.
thing going around we call the joy.
Yep.
There's lollipops, and then there's remaining sugar-free. So yes, obviously the performance-based arts are taking a big hit in that regard, because I mean, and it kind of stands to reason that a lot of artists are opting out of lollipops. It seems to be like they, as much as they want to make it a racial thing, I think it's actually like an artistic, like I think artists are the ones to blame. If we're gonna say like there's a demographic that just refuses to get this, it seems to be us, whatever that reason is. But for me, it's just performances, all of it, right?
Yes.
Like the thing that got me into wanting to be in bands was the idea of being on stage in front of people singing that way. You know, singing in a studio is fun. Like I enjoy it. It's nice. And when you were talking about your voice piped into your ears, I remember going through that too, because I grew up singing, you know, like you in choirs, and I would sing in my basement, things like that, but never like through headphones. And then the first time I ever got in a recording booth, and I was like, who is this guy, right? And doing the one on, one off thing, which I'm sure you've experienced with, or just, can we just take this off? Like, I can kind of hear it, you know. But yeah, it's the process of performing is what it's always been about for me. So even in music, just before this, like literally right before this, I had taken a long break, and then we did a live performance like March of 2020, I guess it would have been. Yeah, so like the beginning of March 2020, we did a live performance. It was fucking amazing. That fire was back in me, and the people that I did it with, person I did it with, you know, we were like talking all that night about, we'll do more of these, we'll do, and then, you know, you're not allowed to do that for the first reason. And then even now that things are starting to open back up, it's the same reason, right? The only kind of alternative is for, like, you know, if you were a singer songwriter in like open mics, you can kind of get away with it in Ontario right now because you can be on patios, right? But you know, in terms of like big venues and stuff, there's a lot of artists out there that can't do their thing, and that's part of, you know, what today here in Canada, or like what you were part of today, I should say, it's still going on. It's going to go on till the end of the month, obviously, probably longer. But you know, that's what this is all about, is getting our lives back in that way. Because there's certain individuals like yourself who, you know, this is our world. Yes. And I've been very fortunate and thankful to connect with other musicians who feel the same way. And I think what's really important is for us to be able to connect and still find ways to make music with one another. I know, like, I'm going to be the first to say it. I know we're on Zoom, you know, but I hate singing on Zoom. I don't even like to say I hate things, but I really dislike singing on Zoom. It's very hard. Well, especially if you're working with another artist, how can you actually collaborate at the same time with, you know, the restrictions of sound on Zoom? It can be a challenge, but I really think it's important to connect with these other artists and almost not even create like a collective, but start finding ways to make music. I have this studio space, you know, I've worked hard to have this space for my clients and for others, but also for myself and my business partner, right? This is a place, when the pandemic happened, we were here most of the time. We stayed here. I said I could go home and sit in front of a TV and watch Netflix or whatever, or I could come here and I could make music and I could experiment on my looper and I can play piano, and, you know, maybe I'll sleep on the studio couch and do it all the next day. But I will say I did have a little bit of time where I felt very down and I stopped singing for a bit, and I was a little angry. I was frustrated. But it's been the hope of what happened today, the response from other people too, and how we've all connected. And I will say, like, I miss live performance. I completely agree with you. Back to that point. We become kind of adrenaline junkies as performers, right? You know, there's nothing like feeling the energy of an audience coming towards you. And I will never forget, you know, I had a very important moment when I was in university. And I remember we actually did a musical, which was funny. Even in opera school, we did Sondheim's A Little Night Music. So originally this was, you know, Judi Dench sang the lead character, Desiree, even though she's not quite a singer when this was done, you know, at the West End. And this story was very touching, very beautiful. The character I was playing was had depth, and she was really a really meaty character. And I remember I was at an opera school, so keep in mind, many of the singers weren't trained actors, right? So they were singers, but you know, here we are doing a musical. I'm very grateful. I'm a graduate of a theater school here in Hamilton, so I was very lucky to kind of have a little bit of that training before going to school. And I remember the moment
before I had come on stage, and I could hear the audience and I could hear how they were reacting to what was being seen and heard on stage. And I just remember feeling like they need something. They need to feel something. They need to be brought to a different place. And it was my goal when I came on stage to bring them to that place. And I felt it wasn't just me. I don't want to take credit for it, but it was me creating that magic with my scene partner and really listening and feeling what they needed from me as an artist. And I gave it to them. And I remember the shift in the air that happened. And it's quite extraordinary. I've had other shifts like that in live performance, but yeah, Shane, there's nothing quite like it.
Not at all. And even collaborating.
Yes.
When I was a bit younger, I used to be kind of against it. Ego got in the way, so to speak.
Like to be a solo artist.
Dealing with bands and such, right? But you know, there's a beauty to it, because there is like a symbiotic connection that you develop with the person that you're with.
Absolutely.
That, you know, there is like a level of telepathy that goes on between the two of you, right? And you start to, people say, like, getting in the pocket or finding the groove or getting in the vibe with someone else, but whatever you want to call that, it gets to the point where it's telepathic. You know what the person's going to do next, and they know what you're going to do next. And once you see them do that, that gives you inspiration to try something new. And once they hear that, they're like, oh yeah, that makes me think of something I was already going to try, you know, and then this thing grows out of it that wouldn't have been there otherwise. And that, you know, separating us and keeping us apart, it's another thing that gets lost, is this beautiful creation that happens when we do get together.
Yes.
And yeah, obviously I saw I don't go outside in the winter. It's just my thing. But I was watching videos of trucks passing through Toronto and Hamilton today. And seeing that, yeah, like you mentioned the tears. Seeing you could see a lot of that even on the video.
Yes.
And maybe to, like, especially someone who's cynical about the whole thing, like you might see that and be like, what the fuck are these people crying about? But like, yeah, it's because in so many different areas of so many different people's lives, things like this have been affected. And things like this, like, you know, some people work out for their mental health, some people sing for their mental health, you know, some people take pills for their mental health, whatever floats your boat. But you know, if you can't access what's good for your mental health, it's a problem, right? And
it's true.
Aside from that, just, you know, we need interaction with each other to make things work.
Yes, I agree. And can I ask you a question? Would you mind?
Absolutely.
If I'd love to know, you know, in your composition process, you know, or when you're making music or working with another artist, because now that we're kind of talking about collaboration and feeling that energy with other people, do you find that you like to work in an improvisational way? Or do you find that, you know, someone will come in with a hook or an idea or a melody and you bounce off that? You know, I myself am not a composer. I channel sound, and I've worked with other people doing this, right? But do you mind kind of sharing your process?
I do a little bit of everything in different projects.
Okay.
I have a band that's the first band I was in was I always say that, like, every person in the band could have fronted a band. You know, like we could have all written all the like every part of the song and been the singer. We all could have done that, but it was a collaborative effort. So there was that. So in a lot of ways for me, I didn't play an instrument for that band at all. So it was just singing. So a lot of it was waiting until the music was all in place and then adding to it. Right. So, and then the other one is completely that, where, like, I have nothing to do with the music, and it's like I'm presented with these instrumentals. So in the second sense, we have this fun thing where he'll, like, name the song based on what he feels when he writes it, right? So he gives me this song and it's got this name, and then I listen to it. So I'm influenced by his title, and then obviously if he felt it in the song, it's probably there. So I end up feeling it too. So a lot of the times his song titles become lyrics in the song that I write. So I'll like, because I'll end up feeling it too. It's just like whatever he wrote when he put the song together, it comes through in his music, right? In his composition, so far so that I feel it once I hear it. And my immediate feeling is to like compose lyrics and melodies that feel the same, right? Or fit that same feeling. So a lot of the time we're very much on board with that. And when we're not, then I just kind of go with whatever I'm feeling. Like I listen to it, whatever it makes me feel, that I come up with words usually first, and then kind of mess around with some melodies. But I've tried a little bit of everything. Like I've written my own, where it's like I start with a vocal melody and then I try to like write on guitar to go along with it, or I've come up with this little thing on guitar and then I just write vocals for it. So I've had the freedom of working by myself, working with other people, working with different groups of people in that way too, all in like band type settings. And it's great. The newest, I'm recording a new Unraveling album now, actually, and we're taking a whole different approach from what we did before, where like he's got this group of songs that had this very set inspiration, and we're just getting together and not even focusing on what the song's going to be about or anything like that. I'm just basically completely freestyling on it. Like we're just being silly. I'm coming up with a bunch of like hooks, different ideas, different melodies, not focusing on like locking anything down, just putting a pile there until we get, oh, that's good, right? Like let's bring that back, and then we'll work on that. We'll expand that out, and then the next thing you know, like 3/4 of the song is done and we're like, oh, okay, here we go, right? So it's all of the different ways are fun. I don't think that any of them are better than others. It's all totally different experiences, and I love it. Like I kind of love working with different people in that sense, just because everyone brings a different energy.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Over the break, I watched the Beatles documentary, Get Back. I don't know if you've seen that yet. And that was if you like the Beatles or not, or whatever. But that was what was so fascinating to me, as someone who comes from this is my score. I'm going to learn the notes in my score. I'm going to stay within the style because this is the style that the composer has composed, etc. It's just I'm so fascinated with how, artists create, collaborate, and how we do get over that ego thing, right? And watching this documentary, I don't want to ruin it for anybody that hasn't watched it, but watching how McCartney would interact with Lennon and how Yoko Ono didn't leave his side, which I found very odd. But just also seeing what was so, again, amazing to me was just seeing how they came up with these songs, how they allowed each other to collaborate, or how they hopped on each other's melodies, or so thank you for that, because as much as I would love to be doing this more, this is my goal. How about some opera crossover if you're thinking of it in the future? This is somewhere that I'd like to explore more, but there is a little bit of getting comfortable and having the courage to just allow what needs to come out and not judge it until we start the collaboration.
So I sing heavy music, so I've had to learn how to scream without destroying my voice, right? My dream. And most people, I still get it to this day, like, that it's just screaming, right? It's like, try it.
That is an art.
Try it. Go give that a try. Like they'll get like halfway through a song and their nose is bleeding and they've got a headache, their voice is gone. And, there's a lot of when I was very young, I was in choirs and musicals and stuff like that. And when I was a teenager, that's when I got into like rock and roll and decided I was going to take, that and go to bands. And and I had to learn this, and it was hard for me because like as every time I would first go to do it, because I'm hurting my voice, like what like I can't do that, like this is going to cause damage. And then I remember someone saying to me, they were actually like a singer themselves, they were like, oh, you're a dude, a few notes, it's just going to make you sound sexy, don't worry about it.
True.
which is not untrue, right? Like there's people whose whole career is built on the fact that they have serious vocal damage,
Yes.
and still sound pretty when they do it. But
Yeah.
like learning how to control that, there was
Yeah.
something that brought back a very primal feeling, like something that reminded me of sitting around a campfire or hunting or something to that effect. That was just like it was unleashing something in me that like our DNA knows, right? Like it's like, and it's not the noise per se, it's the feeling that the noise creates in my body when I make it, right? And then learning to control that, it's very similar to like either polyphonic singing, if you can do that, or like the Tibetan throat singing, right? Where you're kind of a lot of people don't understand, like there's two sets of vocal cords, the false cords and the primary cords, and basically what you're doing when you're screaming is creating a note with one and making the other one create a harmonic, almost like hitting a distortion pedal on your guitar, right?
Absolutely.
Same thing, but you're doing that with your voice. I got really lucky, and I found this lady. Her name was Melissa Cross, and she had worked with Corey Taylor for Slipknot, a bunch of metal people like that, but she was classically trained, and she had figured it out. She figured out, oh, okay, this is what they're doing when they're screaming. This is what I need to teach them so they don't fucking kill themselves, so they can do this and prolong it, because she really enjoyed the way it sounded. And she actually did this thing where she put a camera, you can find this on YouTube, she puts a camera up her nose and down the back, and then she shows you what the vocal cords look like as she's screaming. It's so beautiful, and it was so enlightening. And understanding, you know, how it works kind of allows you as a singer to be able to like almost visualize how to push energy through the, what I like to call like a organic technology that is this body that we have, how to push the energy through it in such a way that it can create all these different frequencies. And like frequencies move people, you know, there's a shit ton of science that shows that is a fact. So when we're singing, and that's why you feel it when you hear your favorite singer hit those good notes, and those, I don't, they're not always high notes, but hit those notes that like, you know, like you really just put you in that place. And there's learning how to do it. Like anyone can kind of learn how to sing and control their notes. And then there's talent on top of that, which, you know, kind of separates people. But at the same time, just learning how to use your voice and control it in and of itself is such a meditative practice. And it's very similar to like working out your muscles. You start to get what they call mind muscle connection, right? These are muscles too, right?
Yes, sir. You're speaking my language. And what's so beautiful, I've actually read, and they've done studies where they've observed people listening to good singers. They've actually put the scope down their throat, and your vocal cords vibrate when you listen to good singing as well. So there's a movement happening, whether or not there's air passing through the cords. And I remember learning that, and that was astonishing to me, because I feel what people feel when they breathe and when they sing. And this is part of the work I do. I love that you brought this up, because this is one of the dreams, right? To learn how to scream. And I know it's an art. I know it requires a technique. You can't just do it. And I have heard of this incredible woman who is classically trained. But it's just, it's pretty spectacular that people think you're just stepping up to a mic and just screaming, because it is primal. I love that you use that word. It's what it makes you feel when you make that sound.
Yeah, it does. And like, you know, you can play with volume. Like certain types of screams are actually incredibly quiet, you know, like very similar to like falsetto notes, right? How like some of the highest notes, like they're kind of quiet, and that's where like, you know, having a good mic comes in handy. And I started to notice it watching metal singers, because I was watching their mic technique, and I was watching, it was Corey Taylor actually at a concert. I was watching him sing with the microphone here, like that kind of distance. Like imagine my thumb is like the top of the microphone. So he's singing his verse and it's out here, and then he starts screaming. And I'm like, because
it's quieter.
Oh, I get it now. And it was like, again, and this is another part of learning how to control your voices. There's so much like mind to voice connection. It's so much like you have to be able to logically conceptualize what you're going to do with your voice in order to make your voice do it. It's such a strange thing.
It's so true. And it's funny you said that too, Shane, even in the simplest way, when you brought up the fact that, you know, we can experience and we're moved by, excuse me, we're moved by vibration. In the simplest way, someone giving you a compliment is going to make you feel a certain way, as opposed to someone giving you a very negative, not compliment.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, there's you know, there's been studies with the Arabic language, which is like, you know, primarily tonal based, and it changing the what do you call it, the luminancy of a candle flame, right? Like this is like, and things like that. And you hear it when you hear like something like Cantonese, it sounds musical, right? And then you find out that like most Chinese people have perfect pitch because they sing their speech, right? Like they have one word that, depending on the pitch they speak it at, changes the meaning of it. So that's, you know, it is primal. It's something it's within us, right? Like I think the English language specifically, but other languages have kind of overcomplicated certain types of expression, and I think that's why people resonate so much with vocal music and singers, you know, and whatnot, is because it kind of brings it back to a language we can all understand at the same time. Like even like you can listen to music where you don't understand the language. Like you could listen to a song in French and not be able to speak French and still be like, oh my God, you know what I mean? And
opera is an example.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah.
I see how moved people are. And I love that you brought this forward too, because, you know, in classical training, in the old school Italian technique that I was trained in, we say canta come si parla, which means you sing as you speak. So if you think of the Italian language, the Italians, they talk like this and everything has a movement, right? And it's very forward, right? And you know, the way that they speak, they literally add more air to the way they sing, and they're opera singers. Like it's extraordinary. And it's also why, you know, within classical music, the German style is very different than the French style, is very different than the Italian style, is very different than the Czech style and the Russian style, etc. And it's almost, you know, understanding the culture helps you to sing the music better. And even speaking the language. I don't speak all the languages that I sing in by any means. And I love that you brought forward to the idea of the sound and frequency again, because we work with something called IPA, which is the International Phonetic Alphabet. I'm sure you've heard of this or encountered this, and it's a sound alphabet. It's symbols that represent a sound. And if you know this alphabet, you can look at those symbols and a sound happens. Right. And I find that extraordinary, because I get that question a lot as an opera singer. Do you speak all of those languages? I do not, but I'm a good actor and I can fake it.
There's different types of resonance when it comes to singing as well. Maybe you could run through those for people, just because a lot of people have no idea that is a difference.
Sure. Resonance or like voice type.
Yeah, just like through head singing to chest singing, you know, that type of thing.
Sure. Yeah. So with there's different placements, of course, right? With where we put the voice. I know, you know, with classical music, of course, if we're looking at female sounds versus male sounds, right? You know, the baritone and the tenor, I don't want to get into the science of voice, but they like to sit more they use different muscles than women do, we'll just say. So their voices often come out more in a belted format or sung with full voice and full muscle. And that's almost the athleticism of the male opera singer, or even just a male belter or a male screamer, right? Is the fact that they are, like you say, using this primal energy. And truthfully, like this is coming from, I call it, when I teach people voice and I work with systems and voice, I call it the generator, right? Where the diaphragm, the lungs, the air, where all of your power comes from. That to me is, you know, more of that full body, that full throated singing. And often in female voices, so sopranos and mezzo sopranos and contraltos, which is the lowest of the female voices, we tend to be more head voice based. And then when we're getting into the soprano range, and they're going up into the rafters and singing quite high, we call those acuti in Italian. And these are, of course, I'm going to say high C6, C6. So above middle C, 2 C's above middle C, that high C and above, where, you know, I as a mezzo soprano stop, I do have to have a high C depending on what I'm singing. That's head voice singing. In really good technique, in Italian operatic classical technique, even when you're more head voice based as a female, or not just as a female, because I should say and specify, there are also countertenors. So the countertenor is the male voice that sings in falsetto, and this came from the old tradition of the castrati, which were men that at a young age, before they had gone through puberty and had the voice change, they were castrated. And thank goodness we don't do this anymore to individuals. So what's interesting is now the mezzo soprano, which is my voice type, and the range that I sing in, we often play men in the opera tradition. So head voice, chest voice, there are other placements, but like I said, they're often, if you're singing in that full way, in a classical way, you're using all of them at some point. Especially as a mezzo, I'm going down into that chest stuff, that is fully belted, that is not mixed. I do have a place where I mix. Mixing basically means bringing the head and the chest together and having a little combo. And then, ooh, sorry, beautiful Mike. I got passionate and emphatic. And then, of course, you know, we sit more so in the head voice. I hope that was clear and not too confusing.
Yeah, it makes sense. So,
I know you know.
Maybe it only makes sense to me. I think it'll make sense to people at home as well.
Let's hope. And if not, just fast forward.
But yeah, like even on the topic of screaming, when you were saying mixing the head, like there's a bit of that too. Like there's a quality of screaming. It's typically the higher end ones that, you know, they are, again, one of the more close mic things, because they are a little bit quieter. They are coming very above the pencil, so to speak, you know, kind of from up here, right?
Yes.
And then there's like the other stuff that's got a lot more voice to it. You pretty much want to get into the lower part.
Yeah.
And that brings us into the other thing, which is like mouth shaping.
Yes.
And like the even the nose and how that plays into it. Michael Jackson gets a whole lot of shit for a lot of different reasons, but part of that nose had to do with his voice. And I think that the other thing that had to do with his voice, you already mentioned about what they used to do to young boys right before they would, but yeah, he said that actually, that the reason why he had his nose done was so that he could hit higher notes, and people laughed at that, but there's truth to that.
He's not wrong.
Yeah.
No, and thank you for bringing that up. I actually called it that your built-in amphitheater. So, you know, the mask, right, where bones are conductors, right? So bones conduct vibration and sound. So if we know how to direct air and focus a pointed sound into the nose or into the cheekbones or the mask, that is how myself as a singular human being can sing to the back of a 3,500 seat theater and be heard, because I use my mask. And we even talk about something in the classical tradition, and I know you talk about this, it may be a different word in your singing training, but it's the core of the voice. So we call it the squillo in the voice, or the squeal. You know, you'll hear those voices that are very pointed, and you can hear that I have core in my sound. But if I'm letting it go and I'm coming down into here, this is more of a chest resonance, right? And when we sing, we want to bring it to this place to take pressure off of here, right? And what I always say to my clients and people that I work with is that our voices are fingerprints. I don't look like you. You don't look like me. I don't look like the person across the street. And that's why I sound like me and you sound like you, because my amphitheater is a different shape than your amphitheater. and that plays a huge role into your sound and the uniqueness of your sound. So I thank creator, I thank the universe and my mom for the schnoz that I was given here.
I posted a picture the other day of me when I was, I don't know, 15 years younger at least, in a band. It was a band shot, and people were pointing out how much I look like Jonathan Davis in that picture.
Ooh.
And what's funny is I can mimic his voice.
Cool.
And we do have the similar shape to the face, right?
That
So
makes
like
sense.
I can like, and when I thought of this while you were speaking about the nose, because I know that when I do Jonathan Davis's voice, the change is in my nose. It's something that I'm doing kind of in my upper palate, in behind my nose, like right in here, basically.
Yeah.
And like singing in rock, you put on a bunch of different accenting and stuff like that, which can get dangerous, right? And if you're not doing it properly, and they have different words for it, different vocal coaches have different words for it, like putting on like fire, where it's kind of like the if you think of like from Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant.
Oh, Robert Plant. Yeah, he's my haircut, by the way. Just kidding.
Yeah. Well, me too. If I put my hair down,
I love him.
we're brother and sister. If I put my hair down, but yeah, it's that kind of a noise versus like like Johnny Cocker or someone who's got like a bit of gravel on their voice.
I love gravel.
Something like that.
Gravel.
Yeah. And yeah, like it's where I was talking about like vocal damage and actually like contributing to the way that certain people sound in a way that's also a contributor factor, especially for a lot of standout like pop female singers.
Yes.
They actually do have like what you're hearing that makes them sound sexy is vocal damage.
Yes.
They were screaming too much at their boyfriend and this happened.
So true. Honestly, I think all the time one of my prophets and one of my favorite artists is Jim Morrison. I am a huge Jim Morrison fan. I love the Doors. And that is something that I always would wonder, like we know the way that man abused alcohol and the way he journeyed with plant medicines, we'll just say. And that's what was astonishing to me. There must have been some form of vocal damage or something, because the sound that was coming, I don't know. First of all,
his resonance. And have you done mushrooms?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Your voice, your own voice sounds like that in your head when you're on mushrooms. That's what Jim Morrison did, is he figured out how to like take that and project it through out of his face.
Dude,
that's what he did.
Thought of it that way.
The first time, Jim Morrison is the reason why I tried psychedelics. So maybe I was a little bit biased to begin with. But the first time I did mushrooms, I remember talking and being like, wait, I am the Lizard King.
Yeah, man.
I can do anything. And realizing, holy fuck, I can sound just like Jim Morrison in my own head right now. And there's just like a quality to it. And even like the spacing and the way you kind of tend to talk when you're like that. Right. Yeah. And then I started listening to his tapes where it was just him reading his poetry. And I was like, oh, okay. And then even if you're drunk, you can hear like the little bit of like that in it too. So I like, and I was going to bring this up when I was talking about vocal damage and people just having nice voices. Like some people just have better voices than others. You can call that talent, or it's a God-given gift, whatever you want to call that. Some people just have really good voices. I was at his party one time. And I got really fucking offended when this lady said this to me, because I was only like 16, 17 at the time. And I just started this little band and I was like trying to do this 9 Inch Nails type thing. And so she's like, well, who do you sing like? And I'm like, well, kind of like Trent Reznor. And she's like, oh, so you can't sing, you just have a good voice. And I was like, bitch, the fuck you say? Like I got offended, right? But like later I understood what she meant is like, is like he's not that he's a bad singer by any stretch, but he's not like the best singer out there, right? But he's got a really cool voice that is attractive to listen to. And so he's got that blend of like, the skill, right? Without the talent, but this voice that's there. And I realized then that like, there's a combination of this is what makes us listen to certain singers and ignore other singers, right? Like I don't listen to Josh Groban. my favorite singer is Maynard, but like
Yeah.
objectively, I think that Josh Groban's probably technically a better singer than Maynard in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? But at the
Honestly,
same time, no, because like Maynard can do stuff that he can't, right? So
yep.
it's like, yeah, there's everybody likes different flavors of ice cream.
That's so true. That's so true. And it's so, I love that you you brought up Josh Groban. My one friend's father calls him Grosh Jobin. But that's a really funny example, because that's someone who I think did some classical training, but whatever he did, or just maybe his anatomy and the way he is, that voice is this big. It's not a large sound, right? So he was very smart in that he knew he had a legit sound. And so what did he do? He became a recording artist. He didn't need to fill a 3,500 seat theater, but it's pretty. And there's a lot of ladies that are my mother's age that really like him. And at one point I really enjoyed him too. But it's interesting. I also notice how my tastes have changed over time, right? With artists. And, you know, I remember what's funny is I didn't really discover Radiohead until a little bit later, because I was a little bit young, you know, when they were really, really, really big. Even things like Incubus that now I listen to in university and got really into them in university. Now I listen and I'm like, that's a little too produced for me. You know, it's like interesting things that because of the versatility of learning as an artist, you know, I've discovered these things. But the last person that I'd love to talk about that I love is Chino Moreno, the lead singer of Deftones. I'm a huge Deftones fan. Do you think that's all voice, or is that effects or combo?
Well, it's his voice, but like he's off key, right? Like he's not singing on key. He's figured out how to sing off key. Funny. Very fucking well, and
look how amazing
when he does it. It's the most bizarre thing when you really break it down.
It really is.
Trent Reznor's first album, Pretty Hate Machine, he had blown out his ears, and he had really bad allergies, I guess, was sneezing a lot, and I'd kind of blown out his ears when he went to record all his vocals, so he couldn't hear himself well. Like, you know what that's like. So it like. And if you go back and you listen to it, you can hear it in his voice. It's like, you know, because you're a singer, you know, like it sounds like you're talking like this, right?
Yes,
like
you need the room.
Cup your hands, put them over your ears. That's what it sounds like. And so he was singing like that. And if you listen to the recording, he is slightly off key, just a little bit.
Because he can't hear
consistently through the album. But because it's consistently through the album, we don't notice it. Chino has built an entire singing career on doing that, where he's just like
so interesting.
Just that enough off that nobody knows what the fuck he's doing. You can't really duplicate it. Like I've tried covering songs, like, and I can kind of do a little bit of it, but I just do it my own way. But like what he's doing, it's just like he's creating magic, and it's like a form of sorcery, living in this little pocket between notes and just going just with. It's not even a vibrato. It's like this perfect way of. You know,
it's so true. And it's almost like I actually saw the Black Diamond Sky tour when they came to Molson Amphitheater. So I saw I'm sorry, I'm not a Mastodon fan, so I didn't go for Mastodon, but I went to hear Deftones and Alice in Chains. But it was amazing because, again, I'm trained to be like in tune. Everything must be in tune. I don't have perfect pitch by any means. But I have that, like you talked about, that muscle memory. I know where certain notes sit in my throat. Right. And that's what I was astonished by, is someone said to me, oh, the Deftones, like he's always out of tune, or they're always out of tune, or he sucks when he's live. But I stood there and I'm like, that was magic. Like I was just brought to another place. There's this, like, you know, not the tallest, like Mexican dude with his like plaid shirt blowing open. And I'm like, oh my God, I love you. It was so funny, but it's like you said, you know, perfection isn't music to me. Hearing that alchemy of energy and vibration that make music, I don't know, is I think what's exciting.
And even like some recorded music from the 90s, like especially through the grunge thing, like I can think of a couple Nirvana songs where this is the case, like the instruments are out of tune.
Yes.
You know, like and we love it because it's still hitting us in that place. And then, you know, other artists ended up figuring out later in around the 2000s, that if you detune instruments on purpose, you can get that same type of effect. It was hilarious to me in a way. But another thing that made me think of was singers not being able to do what they do on records when they sing live. I may have brought this up on this podcast, it may have been another one, but the singer from Offspring, when Offspring really blew up, I remember going to see them, and I have kind of sensitive ears, so I could tell that like the guitars were in standard tuning.
Yes.
And he was off key, like he was consistently flat on everything, and I was like, that's kind of fucking weird. That kind of sucked, you know what I mean? And I saw him a couple of years later, and I immediately noticed, like, right from that they were down half a step, like they were playing in what you like C sharp, right?
Oh, interesting.
And I'm like, oh, okay. And then he nailed it. And then so my big inspiration to start singing for bands was Bon Jovi. So the first time I saw Bon Jovi live, that was the first thing I noticed was, oh, he's half a step down on everything. because Jesus Christ, that man can sing high, but like if you have to do that, 28 days out of 30 while touring and partying and everything else, like you're not going to be able to keep that up. And that was like, I remember studying so hard, watching singers in live, and like trying to get as much information as I could about like being able to maintain your voice while you're doing like long live shows, because like especially in like rock music, there's a certain amount of like you have to kind of be over the top all the time, or at least you feel like you have to be. So it took a really long time to learn how to harness that and remember that like you can act like you're trying that hard without trying that hard, right?
Totally. It's you have to, you really do learn that self-preservation as an artist. And I started learning it in my teens, being a part of a theater school, and you want to stay up all night. You want to go do this. You want to go to the party after the show. You want to, but it's being a performance artist. Sometimes you do have, especially being a classical artist. Like I have had to be that monk, or that nun, where I've had to go home when everybody else was going to enjoy themselves, or I had to go to bed early because I had my 8:30 skills class in the morning. Right. And, there's really this interesting push pull you have as an artist where it's like, do I give it all or do I show them I'm giving it all? And it really comes down to that yes, repetition, but also just time and learning about how you work and what you need and how much rest or not, and it's an interesting beast. And I've gone through stages of it in my life too. That first vocal injury was because I didn't know that. And I just was a crazy teenager that just yell, scream, sang everything.
But I always tell, we don't have frets. We don't have keys.
That's so true.
We don't have little holes that we plug with our finger.
Yeah.
We don't have sticks that we hit things with. It's a fucking organ. And it's the most delicate organ.
And it's the size of your pinky fingernail. People don't realize that your vocal cords are the length of your pinky fingernail. It's like this big. Well, mine are right now, but
they're like basically like some type of weird organic paper. Like it doesn't even make sense. Like there's nothing else in our body that even is like it, except for maybe the eyeball, which is a weird thing to say, but it's like
so true. And it's like it can't make the sound, it can't do what it needs to do unless the other systems are working to make it do that thing.
Well, like the push of the diaphragm, and it's hilarious because like learning to do that really young has helped me in everything in life.
Awesome.
Like the breathing techniques that you learn through singing.
Yes.
Like and this is kind of to change subjects into like breath work. Like the when you're singing properly, there is a certain like lightheadedness almost that comes in, almost like a high that takes over. It kind of starts up as a tingling in the back of your skull, and then starts to take over the whole top of your skull. The next thing you know, you can't feel your fucking face, and you're kind of floating. And that's because of the breath work that you're doing.
Yes.
But like, you know, different types of shamanism, various other types of practices incorporate that as well, which I think you're familiar with.
Absolutely. It was actually during how our world has shifted over the past 2 years that I really started experimenting with breath work in depth. And it was with our mutual friend Ariane, and she had been really working with breath very consistently and was constantly encouraging me. You know, I already was a trained opera singer. I was already using my breath in that way. I teach people that breath, a breath for performance, right? But it wasn't until I started working with breath in a healing and spiritual way that I started to really understand it and to make shifts, and learning that the largest concentration of DMT in the body exists in the lungs and is released when we super oxygenate the body. I have had incredible experiences. Of course, you know, when you do these shamanic breathwork practices, you do deal with physical sensations that are, like, for the first time, extraordinary. You know, you do deal with things like cramping in the hands, and it is the breath that unwinds that cramping and removes that. I would never have thought that I would breathe simultaneously without thinking, open mouthed for 50 minutes. Sometimes leaving my body, and my body continued doing that without my without my spiritual body being inside of it, and then all of a sudden entering again and going and realizing I hadn't been breathing for I don't know how long, but I obviously had enough oxygen within my body, you know, to keep my body alive. It's been extraordinary. It's moved sorrow, grief, pain. At the age of 27, I lost my best friend. I don't want to say lost. That's not, my friend transitioned, I should say. It changed my life and it rocked me. And I carried and walked around with a grief cloud over my head for many, many, many years. And it wasn't really until I started, yes, working with energy, but doing this breath work, that I was able to practically move that with something that existed already within me. I didn't have to go seek it outside of myself. I didn't have to pay thousands of dollars. It's accessible to me. It's accessible to everybody. And we just need to be shown the way and open ourselves to being shown the way. So that went longer than I planned on, but I love breath work. Breath is life.
It is, right? Like, we don't, it's amazing how much it's amazing that we don't have to think about it to begin with, right?
Involuntary. The diaphragm, exactly. An involuntary muscle.
Once you actually do, and no matter what brings you there, like for me it was singing, and
yes,
probably, you know, and
same. Yes,
and working out, like I could, like doing martial arts and stuff. There was always very focused on
yes.
Right? Like there was focus on breath for that. And then, you know, of course, later in life, getting into things like meditation and whatnot, like freely. You don't really think about how little you're aware of your breath until you try to force yourself to be. And it's, what's funny about that is when you first start trying to do it, you can't breathe. You know, right? Like pretty much everybody has told me that when like they get to this point where it's like they end up gasping for air. It's like they're breathing in and out, but it's almost like they're not getting the oxygen. It's because you're not used to breathing like that, right? Exactly. You're not used to having your full lung capacity used. Yes. You're used to this very shallow, your diaphragm's all shoved into your gut, and like your young lungs have nowhere to go. So you're really just breathing in your chest cavity and not even realizing you're doing that. And so, you'll start to realize it opens up your posture. It'll start to move your muscles around. Like there's so much movement that ends up coming when you start playing with it. So I get what you mean by it being profound for you.
Very, very much so. And then I think, just to add on to that really briefly, that I've seen the very quick shifts happening in the clients that I work with here at the studio, or even just, you know, like my clients as a Reiki practitioner. You know, I've started doing some breath work with them and just seeing their excitement level, and just saying, I come to this now when I need to find grounding, or I need to wake up, or, you know, I need to move something. And yeah, like I said, you know, I've done a little bit of reading, like actual like reading book research, not, you know, listening to that research. And I've done some reading about breath, and it's really interesting because the way that we've evolved over time, even our physical, like actual bodies, the way they've evolved is everything has become elongated. So when we were early humans, things were shorter and they were wider, meaning our nostrils were wider, our nasal passages were wider. Now what's happening is the palate, the soft palate, is actually making this cave thing happen, which is causing things like tongue-tiedness. I discovered at 32 years old, I'm 34 now, I discovered at 32 years old that I was tongue-tied. I had no idea. Nobody told me, no dentist. And this dentist looked at me and goes, we can't change that. It would change your sound. We're not touching that. And I'm like, bless you, which has to do with the fascia being shorter in your neck and your throat and your body, etc. And this has happened over evolution and over time, or sorry, evolution has happened over time because we haven't been breathing. We've stopped breathing in full. And one last thing, mouth breathing is not equal to nose breathing. They have very specific purposes, and both, you know, like when we do the shamanic breath work, it's open mouthed. But, you know, not being able to breathe through here really affects your health, your mental health, and your physical health. So just all these small things that are natural to us that have changed over time and we've gone away from, I think partially because we've gone away from ancient practices that were very, very, very powerful. Yeah, we've come here. So now it's time to come back to those things.
We can.
We can, and we are.
Exactly. Well, at least some of us are.
Yes, some of us.
Have you fucked around with changing tuning of instruments, like changing to the 432, or what's the other one, 524? My memory of the numbers is horrible.
I haven't done that yet. There's also so we normally work in A440, right? Is the regular. So Baroque instruments, I'm actually glad you brought this forward. Baroque instruments used to be tuned to A442 is what I was I think I might be wrong about that number, but the tuning was slightly different. So when we sing things like Mozart, for instance, or Handel, the way that we sing them now, we actually are singing them either a semitone or a whole tone higher than they would have been sung back in the day in the 16th century or 17th century. And it's so interesting because we sing Mozart and people go, you know, it's so challenging. And I say, yes, because Mozart back in the day, we would have all been singing this down a semitone or a full tone. And so now playing with, I haven't yet experimented with, you know, singing along to something that's in 432. I actually do know someone who plays, she's tuned her guitar to that frequency, and she actually plays in that frequency. And I do hear a difference. I notice a difference. And sometimes I will say I do experiment with frequency, like those long frequencies, things that you can even find on YouTube that are tuned to, you know, 432. So maybe I lied. Maybe I have experimented with it, but I haven't tuned an actual instrument. I've just put the frequency on and I've worked with it, and I've maybe improvised with it, or tried to create melody from it. But that's something that I'd really like to experiment with more, especially with intention, you know, looking up these frequencies. And, you know, like William Reif, who discovered that specific frequencies could neutralize specific diseases if we knew the actual frequency. I would love to do that with music. I would love to do that with with cancer, with brain tumors. I would love to sing into those, find the actual vibration that causes me to neutralize it. I don't know how I'm going to do that yet. I am by no means a scientist or a brain surgeon, but that's something that came forward that I'm like, that's going to happen someday. We are going to be healing people with frequency. We already are. But Edgar Cayce said it, you know, sound is the medicine of the future. and it's the medicine of the past too, but we're bringing it back. So to answer your question, yes and no, and I'd like to experiment more.
I had a friend who I used to spend a lot of time with, an older friend, and they played piano a lot, and I would mess around with their piano. And my whole life, I used to always just go like, why is it that that piano sounded more beautiful to me than any other piano I've ever played, right? And I could never figure it out. It wasn't until like I've known them my whole life, and I was just, well, I think I was about 32 when I finally asked, like, what is it about your piano? Like,
yes.
Why is it so fucking beautiful? And he smiled and he's like, the whole thing's tuned to 432. Everything else is 440. I'm like, wow. And that was what convinced me to finally tune my acoustic guitar to it. And so my suggestion to you is, you can get one even for your phone, 432 tuner. Yep. Throw an acoustic guitar at 432.
Okay.
Strum it. Just any chord you want. Pick a chord, give it a strum. You're gonna feel it. You'll feel it through like your basically your chakra in your diaphragm, right? Like you'll feel it. There's no words for it, but it feels different. And then to sing to it, yes, to me it seemed so much more natural. Like so much more natural. Like most of what I do, like I don't learn a lot of songs on acoustic guitar. I basically only learn to sing and play just to practice pitch pretty much. But then once I knew a few chords, I started writing some songs. So I've got like a repertoire of acoustic songs that I've written that I sing and play. And I remember like tuning them all down to that and being like, this is where they're all supposed to be. And then singing them again was just so much more natural. But yeah, like it has happened. I had a roommate. He like, he's sitting there, he's listening to me, and the next thing you know, he's in tears. He's like, wow, I don't know what the fuck's wrong. Like, but there's definitely something to it. And then the other one being the 532, I think it is. But
I think you're correct. I think 532 is it.
Which they say is more healing. I've never tried that because it's difficult for guitar, but sure. But yeah, there's definitely something to it. And I'm not like, whether I subscribe to this conspiracy theory that it was done on purpose to fuck with us or not, whether that's true or not, there is a very noticeable difference between the two tunings. I have a friend who did his whole record in 432. Of course, it makes it impossible because you go to jam with other instruments and you're not tuned with them, right? But
let's start a 432 revolution, Shane.
we could do it,
We'll tune everything.
So it'll be interesting. Please try it for me, and then you'll have to report back and let me know how it felt. And one more thing I wanted to ask you was, you mentioned the being tongue-tied, and them saying that it was part of your sound. Yes. So probably what happened is like that's been like maybe like not necessarily a handicap, but a difficulty for you at some point in time. Mm-hmm. And because you didn't have a doctor to say, oh, you're tongue-tied, you just figured it was normal. Because it's normal, I'm going to work around it. Yes. I found out way late in life that I'm autistic. And I started to like, when I was talking to the doctor about it, they started asking me a bunch of questions. And I basically realized that I wasn't allowed to be autistic. Wow. And so I taught myself not to be, if that makes sense. Like I was never diagnosed and I didn't have any type of nurture that would have allowed, or an environment that would have allowed for, those things. So I had to learn how to do things that were highly difficult for me to compensate, because I had no other choice. And I think that your voice probably did something very similar, where you've probably learned different ways of shaping your mouth and opening and closing your mouth, and even shaping your nasal cavity to hit notes that other singers would probably do differently. So that's probably pretty wild.
I think you're completely bang on with that, because similarly to, speaking about being on the spectrum, I have totally diagnosed myself. I am ADHD, but nobody told me that. I learned to cope. I figured it out, and I think I've succeeded fairly well in life. Thank goodness I trusted my destiny and became an artist, right? But absolutely. And that's exactly the discussion I had, with the dentist. I adapted. I learned how to adapt. So I could do what I needed to do. And I did notice, in my training there, when you talked about mouth placement earlier, I didn't actually touch on that, but that was a huge thing for me where, I would overextend the jaw or open the jaw. And, my teachers would be like, open your mouth. I'm like, but like, it's open. I can't go any further here. And now I understand why, but I also am thankful for that, because the changes are happening internally. You shouldn't be, opening your jaw to the point of like Jurassic Park styles, because that's the sound is going to not know where to go if there's too much space to kind of dance around in. And that's also how we polyphonic singing you talked about earlier, right? Or overtone singing. I just discovered this. I figured it out on my own. I started changing the shape of my tongue in my mouth. I started changing my lip shape, and I can sing a seventh, with this in the overtones by just changing the shape of my lips, And so, yes, thank you. I totally agree. And I think, society has told you are autistic or you are ADHD, but really you have a superpower and I have a superpower, many superpowers. And I work with students on the spectrum and with disability, and this is what we teach them and remind them of. You have superpowers. You are connected in a way that many people are not connected. And the fact that they're here, voice acting and being artists when someone told them they couldn't, I say, fuck that. You be what you want to be. And your superpowers are only going to make you fly, not stop you. So thank you, Sean. Sean, sorry.
It's okay, Veronica. Okay.
Okay, call me Veronica.
Going back
People often call me Jennifer. It's very funny. They changed Stephanie to Jennifer or Catherine.
Well, that was all part of the bit. That wasn't that I couldn't.
Oh, I know.
I have done a podcast where I definitely could not say the guy's name. I have this problem where if I can read his name, I can't say it.
Yeah.
It's a Greek name. Anyways, I already embarrassed myself with that one. Yeah, he gets it. I think he gets it. I hope he gets it. You're awesome. You're awesome all the time. You're awesome. Anyways, I think I've taken up enough of your time, so we will let you go for now. I feel like we could probably do this again at some time because it's been a lot of fun. Oh, one last thing. Just because I remembered you said it, the polyphonic singing. So you are familiar with that?
Yes.
That's what you'll hear when you're tuning your guitar into that tuning. You'll hear the polyphonic overtone of it. You'll hear the
beautiful,
basically the harmonic of it.
Gorgeous.
And it's and then when you strum a chord, there's a second chord in harmony there.
Quantum sound, baby.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome.
Anyways, beautiful lady, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Shane. It's been a great pleasure.
We will say bye to everybody at home.
Bye, everyone.
Hey guys, a little promo read here for a new sponsor here on the Miscellanea podcast. For the curious, merging the mystical into the mundane. The sacred wanderer knows it's a feeling. You are it, architect of its kind, multifaceted human being. Multidimensional, transitioning between worlds. A subtle portal through integration. A quest to ground a new paradigm. Inspired by You Creations, creating curious minds. If you go to Inspired by You Creations, that is inspired by the letter U Creations, all one word.com, and enter promo code CURIOUS20, you will receive $20 off all of the magical products on that page, such as this t-shirt I am wearing right now. Go check them out. I think you'll like it. Another shout out to Bow Chicka Wow Wow Records. Promo code MISC20, MISC20 on the Bow Chicka Wow shop on Etsy will get you 25% off of the 20 Infinity t-shirt and all of their other products there. So thank you guys for supporting Miscellanea. Enjoy the rest of the podcast.